So, hello and welcome to this, our first recorded conversation in conversation with people who all work here at CyberArk. Specifically, this conversation relating to Pride, to the LGBTQIA plus community, and the importance of visibility of that community in the workplace, outside of the workplace more generally, and conversation, yeah, about why that is important for us personally, but also on a wider, broader level as well. So, joining me today, we have Annie and Faisal. So we'll just do a quick bit of introductions, I guess. So I'm Luke. I'm the Pride Chair of the ERG for EMEA. I work in the Barcelona office as an SDR, and my pronouns are he, him. Faisal?
Hey, I'm Fayssal. I just started a month and a half ago. I'm also working in the Barcelona office, and my pronouns are he, him also.
And we have Annie.
Hi, folks. My name is Ani King. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the premium support manager in the Americas, and I'm also one of the Cyber Pride ERG co-chairs.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for joining. It's been a bit of a calendar shuffle to get us to here. So grateful for that. And thank you for everyone who is listening. I think probably a good place to start is why, visibility of community. We're talking specifically about the LGBTQIA plus community here, but also just wider as well, why the visibility of communities is important in the workplace. And because that is essentially what we're trying to do with the ERG, is to provide visibility, to provide a space, to provide somewhere for people to know that we're here and we are visible and available for people to come and use as a resource, but also to meet each other and network. And I don't know, I think Faisal, you were saying when we were having a quick conversation last week about how, as someone who's just started, to see all of the stuff that has been going on in the last few weeks because of Pride, and how that resonated with you. I don't know if you want to speak on that a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah, exactly. That was pretty impressive for me in a good way. That when I arrived to the Barcelona office, I saw that it was like super open-minded, super. We had like some events for Pride. We had like the drag bingo that I really liked. And it was really cool to know that you can be yourself and no one's gonna judge you or anything. And I really appreciate it. It's like it's the first time that have this in a job, and that's why I liked it.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience joining. I came from a workplace. I mean, I'm actually a trained actor by profession, and I actually came to this role, well, because of COVID, really. It took away all of my work, and I had to find something to do to earn money to pay my rent. And I was working in like a agency-based SDR company, and I spent the whole time in that workplace on Zoom with, not meeting my colleagues and essentially feeling very much like I was not feeling safe or feeling like it was a space where I wanted to be very visible, and never really spoke out about anything in that regard. And when I came to CyberArk, I also had the same thing in the Barcelona office where I was suddenly like, okay, this is a space where I can be very openly and proudly who I am without being fearful of judgment or comments or putting myself in a vulnerable place. Made essentially the first thing that happened for me there was when I was speaking to HR and they were speaking to someone who had their pronouns in their email. And that for me was an instant sign that regardless of, I mean, I identify as a cis man, as a he, him, but knowing that someone in the company was at least aware of these things, and was putting that message out immediately made me want to pursue that role more than the others I was interviewing. I know, Annie, you have uh, a similar story from when you joined as well.
Yeah. I mean, right from the start, even before I really came to CyberArk, when I was working with Sheethal, our recruiter, she had her pronouns in her email. I felt very comfortable knowing too, because the position was, hey, you should apply for this. It came from somebody I'd worked with before who is very visibly out as a trans man at CYBR, who was able to transition here comfortably. So that additional level of visibility made me want to go through the process, and then to continue to have it play out through the interview process, right? Before we even get all the way through the door, my potential future boss was very aware of my pronouns. As we went through the various interviews and more people came in, you could tell that he had prepped them ahead of time, just in a let's make sure that we get this right kind of way. And I appreciated that if that level of effort happens on the daily for folks who are just going through the interview process, that it was likely that there would be a good setup if I got the job, if I started. And I think that those signifiers, if you're not somebody who necessarily has to introduce with pronouns regularly, might seem fairly small, but it's a pretty big message that at least somebody is thinking about the LGBTQIA plus community, that somebody is thinking about the importance of being able to connect with people outside of the sphere you might actually know. And I felt very confident that when I started, I would likely be able to be as comfortably out as I had been maybe ever before.
Yeah. And I think as well for people who, like you say, don't have to, where introducing themselves with pronouns is not a part of their daily experience and part of the anxieties that they might have when meeting new people or putting themselves into new social situations or workplace situations. It might seem that putting pronouns into an email is about you and about you kind of declaring your pronouns, whereas actually it's about sending a message to anyone who's receiving your emails that you might be a safe place for them to exist and to exist openly, and knowing that there's someone out there who gets it.
Absolutely. I mean, those written and visual cues, I think, have been, a part of, the LGBTQIA plus community forever. I mean, Oscar Wilde had us wearing green carnations. We've used various flowers and handkerchiefs and hand signs. And I mean, we could talk about cuffing for a really long time. So I think, like, for queer people, that there are those instant visual things that make you think, okay, like at least I can start here. It's not dissimilar to seeing a rainbow flag in a business, where it's okay, at least if I go in here, the odds that there will be open hostility are significantly lower. And the more people you see who are putting their pronouns in there, more it says hey, I might not need to do this in my introductions all the time, but I'm allowing for the fact and probably open to the fact that other people do. And sometimes that level of just knowing somebody might also handle correcting misuse of your own pronouns on the back end is higher. So it takes a little bit of that feeling of, how much work am I going to have to do to make sure that people perceive me as I actually am.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why visibility of a group or a community within, say, a workplace, or it could be any kind of socially structured place, to have a visible group, that is a huge part of that, where you go, okay, maybe I'm not going to have to fight all these battles by myself, or maybe there's someone who I can just speak to and say, oh, this happened to me today, it made me feel really rubbish and really low, but I have someone to go to and kind of share that with, and who might, like you say, pick up that battle for me in certain situations, or at least just be a visible ally. I also think if you are comfortable to be that visible person, that's great. And visibility, again, it's not just about giving a space for people who want to be openly and proudly and visibly out, or whatever. It's also just as important for the people who don't want that, because that you have an advocate, or that there's going to be a space where people are going to be able to pick up your battles, even if you're not fully comfortable in doing that yourself. Or it's not even about comfort, it's just not everybody, and I know we've spoken about this before, Annie, like not everybody wants to be a spokesman or a spokesperson. No one should have to be a spokesperson. By being a member of the LGBTQI plus community doesn't mean you have to suddenly be an advocate and I think that's a box that people are often put into, like, you must be politically active and you must be out on the barricades, Whereas actually a lot of people don't want any of that. So to have a place where that visibility is there also provides a sense of comfort for the people who don't want to be,
For
out there.
sure. I mean, because I think sometimes I think we forget, especially during Pride Month, that for folks who choose to live stealth lives, that's also a valid choice, and that the reasons are the reasons. But at minimum, if we are doing a good job of, for those of us who are making ourselves visible and we're doing a good job of creating spaces or pruning spaces so that they're safe, whether you are visibly and actively out. I mean, it's just as hurtful for folks who are not visibly out to hear some of the things that are said in spaces where it's like, oh, I can just say whatever I want, or, where it's like, oh, we don't have to be PC here. I've heard that before, when you enter a room before people are aware of who you are. And so it is a matter of making sure that if you're somebody who is queer or trans or any other identity and not out in the workplace, you're still not going to have to hear things that are painful or that are hurtful or traumatizing. You can at least exist in this space as you are without more harm potentially being piled on, because a lot of the reasons that people choose to stay stealth are for safety, whether they're physical, emotional, or otherwise.
Hmm. And it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort to be visibly out in a space where, where you're going to be on the receiving end of microaggressions, people saying things, people getting things wrong, people, just chipping away. And it's those little things that just keep on chipping. And actually, I think if you are not out, sometimes it can be even worse because people do see you as, or people. I've been in many situations where in that context I was not out to the people involved, and they made homophobic jokes about other people to me, and that is sometimes worse, um, because you are not only having to take on homophobia that's maybe directed at someone else, but it's coming at you, but you're also having to battle the fact that these people see you as a place where they feel comfortable to do that. So you're kind of put in a lot of corners, and it's, yeah. Faisal, you said you felt different coming to CyberArk than like other jobs you'd had. What was your experience in past jobs and roles?
I think it's more about my university than CyberArk, to be honest.
Hmm.
And it was not a good experience. I don't want to like go too much into detail,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. And look, I think that's why, we're saying it's not just about the workplace. It, like, these conversations and these things go beyond just work. And we're constantly, as part of a community that does face a lot of aggression and a lot of hate and a lot of confusion and resistance. There's loads of spaces that are physically, mentally, and emotionally unsafe to be in. Which is why, for me, having visibility is absolutely the most powerful thing that we can offer, if we can do that, because it does give someone else something to look at and see potential safety, when we're often in places that don't offer that.
I also think it's a significant part of combating the feeling of, if you can't see it, how are you supposed to be it, kind of thing, right? If we don't see queer and trans people in positions that we're interested in growing into, it's harder to believe that it's possible, right? If you look you know, at a company and mostly everyone you see is cisgender and probably hetero, and within the tech community, it's also a matter of how many women are there in these positions and so on. And I think
Mm,
it needs to be a significant part of any ERG's purpose to increase visibility and to increase the number of people who are representative in those roles. And I think, we were talking about last week that, in addition to it being good for people who work at the company and making sure, hey, here are the people I know I can go talk to. Here are people I can get some advice from. Here's a group of people I can grow with. It also means that the more comfortable and visible we are, we're consistently being a part of altering our company culture for the good, which means that it also makes it easier to bring in new people. One of the biggest challenges I think I've seen in the tech industry as somebody who's probably interviewed and hired hundreds of people is that we're more likely to recommend and then ultimately move people that we know and understand and who are like us through that process. And so the more different our workforce is, the more variety we're going to get with people who have skills and experiences, who feel safe applying, who feel safe coming to work for us. And, for the community, that's always good, right? Because we also have to be careful about not assuming that identities are kind of locked into a particular set of definitions. And, we all keep growing together as we're introduced to new people, as we are internalizing, here's what representation really looks like. Here's what a practical effort looks like in making sure that our company is moving forward in the way that we talk about. As long as again, one of the reasons I felt so comfortable going through the process of coming to CyberArk is that I knew people who worked here, who were comfortably out, who had had a good experience. But not everybody who might be a great fit for CyberArk necessarily already knows somebody here. And so if we can I think again, it's for people who feel compelled or feel safe or feel like they can be visible. But I think that also means that as we're doing that, we have to be open to the fact that we are building a foundation that is, safe for a certain set of identities now, because those are the identities we relate to, we inhabit, we understand them. But another goal should be always increasing that openness to people with identities that we're not as familiar with, stepping into ERGs, being a part of planning, being a part of figuring out what do we need most to be successful and to be supportive. Which is just a long way of saying the more of us that feel comfortable being out and visible, ideally, that just means more and more people will be able to do the same.
Yeah. And I think, more widely, more broadly, the conversation has moved on from visibility as kind of the golden standard, and actually it's about making real change, making change for communities, making change for people on the ground, shifting perspectives, and putting in both practical, tangible financial support and making people's lives different and better. But visibility is a really important first step on that path. And I think if visibility is all, so I'm thinking about, the world we live in now with social media and with influencers and with people who are very quick to deem themselves activists when actually they're not really doing very much. But if it stops at visibility, then that's not good enough, because we live in a world and a time where visibility is fairly easy to achieve. You can be very visible very quickly to millions of people just using your phone. But I think it's the most crucial first step, especially if we're talking about something like an ERG, something in a company, because it allows people to then interact on their own terms. So wherever someone is on their journey, it doesn't mean that, we as an ERG are kind of like trying to find everyone who's a member of the community in the company. It's about going, well, we're here and we're doing this. And if and when you want to engage with us and you want to just drop a quick message or get more actively involved in the kind of the practical things that we're doing, however you want to interact with us, you can. And us just being here visibly is, I think, the most important first step to be able to then get that change.
Yeah, that visibility with substance, I think, is a part of it. And that kind of, we've talked about how our goal with Pride this month at CyberArk through the ERG is to focus on celebration, to focus on, the joy of being able to inhabit your most authentic self in the way that you want to. And I think that what we're really trying to say is that survival is not the end goal, right? That's just a part of it. Becoming more safe is not the end goal. What we want to be able to do is thrive. I mean, I think that that's the point of an ERG. You know, in a workplace, we're trying to create and foster and grow ways for members of our community to thrive, to become successful in the ways that are most important to them, with their identity being a positive factor in that, not having to look at this, oh, I'm a queer person and I'm always dragging this around like this heavy weight and hoping that it doesn't hold me back from whatever I'm trying to do. I mean, there's again, a lot of reasons that people are not comfortable being out. And some of that is that if I am who I am to everyone I meet, what will that take from me? And so as a queer person who's a part of an ERG, I think I can say one of my most personal goals is to continuously shift that from I'm just trying to make this a space where you don't have to worry about aggression to I want this to be a space where you can foster yourself in the company of your own community, and allies who are able to help people grow are a part of that. It's thinking a little bit bigger, right? Because when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it really has to grow from people aren't afraid to go to work most of the time to, hey, people can just show up. They can show up and say, hi, I'm Ani King. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm happy to be here. And I have an idea of what that's going to look like. And I don't feel not only that I won't run into, roadblocks as a queer person or a non-binary person, but that I'll be supported because of who I am, not despite it.
Yeah. And create a space to thrive and grow in a way that, in other situations and contexts, you might be taking away from yourself and stripping back and removing parts of yourself to actually be able to thrive with all of that on and again, not necessarily on display, but being accepted and knowing that you're stepping into every situation as your full self, that kind of leads me on to what my kind of final kind of point was going to be, which was, and also question, which was, so this is all great up to now, but where do we see the ERG in the future, and where do we see that going? So Fayssal, I guess, is again someone who's just started and is just kind of seeing all of this, because for me and Ani, this is something that we've kind of been building, but as you, someone who's sort of stepping into it as it is now, what would you want someone who is joining the company in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years time? What would you want to see for them, that kind of builds on your experience?
Honestly, I want them to have like the same experience as me, to know that it's safe at the beginning directly when you enter the company, to know that you have like a place to talk, to do things like you want. Maybe for me it was easier because it's Pride Month and it's more easy in the moment to have events, but maybe having some events or virtual some month every time someone join a company could be a good thing to make them have the same feeling as me.
Yeah. And that's definitely something we talk about a lot in the ERG, and we have great support. I mean, in EMEA, we have great support from L&D and HR about, making sure that this isn't just a flash in the pan month of June thing where we go, oh great, you happen to start just as we were doing all of this Pride stuff, and then it goes to bed for a year. But making sure that we're consistently showing up throughout the year, providing that exact same experience that you had for anyone joining the company in October or November or December. And that's kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier, Annie, which is like, for me, I think the future that I want to see for the RG, for CYBR in general, is that cultural, something that's so embedded in the culture of the company and the employees that it is not, it's not a special thing when this stuff happens and it goes out. It is just part of everyone's day to day constantly, which is a safe space, a visible community that exists and thrives and is celebrated and celebrates itself, every day, every week, every month of the year.
Yeah, I like kind of closing up with what we envisioned for the ERG, because I think that um, the purpose to any level of activism, whether you're outside of your work or you're in work, is to create a consistently better future, and to do it in a way that is sustainable, to do it in a way that can support itself, can keep growing, can keep um, inviting more people in, right? The goal
Hmm.
is for people to feel welcome. This is their space. This is where they can be who they are. And I think we have had some really beautifully vulnerable moments with some, with some of the members of our community and some allies with some of the events we're putting on. And I think that as long as we keep that kind of focus on, let's make sure that these are meaningful events and
Hmm.
conversations. Let's make sure that they're based on what people are asking for or saying they need in order to grow and thrive, that we'll continue to do well and then do better, right? So that when, again, whether you come in September or December or May, it doesn't matter if it's Pride Month or not. You're still going to know, okay, here's where I can find my people.
Hmm.
Uh, here's how I can make sure that I get to grow too with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and also knowing that you can engage in that without feeling the need to share every kind of inch and second of
Mhm.
your personal life, like there's a
Yeah.
difference between visibility and, being exploited or having your personal lives on display for everyone to see. I might be someone who is kind of quite outwardly a member of the LGBTIQ plus community, but I'm sure that a lot of people might look at me and see, for example, a gay man. That's not how I identify. So it's there's you can kind of be out and visible in a way that also is not someone having access to every single part of your personal life. And I think have a conversation, and you might find out a bit more about someone, but it doesn't have to be that sort of vulnerable, and it doesn't have to be a dangerous thing. And I think we're
Yeah.
we're definitely on the way to have people know that implicitly, that the space that we're creating is a safe one, and it's not a dangerous one,
Mhm.
and is an encouraging one, and is a celebratory one.
What you'll find, hopefully, is that as a community, we are very available to each other to make sure that it's not just, again, surviving, but that we're talking about what thriving looks like. We're talking about what celebration is. We're putting emphasis beyond just educating people on why we should be able to live, but also talking about the things that are great about being queer and trans and LGBTQIA plus and alive,
Hmm.
because there's so much more to it than often you'll see at a surface level.
100%. We're going to have to wrap up because we have less than a minute on this recording, and I don't know when it's going to end. So thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Annie, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It was great.
Thank you, everyone.